3 words changed everything between us, and what I said in front of 200 people made a billionaire mafia boss forget how to breathe. He thought I was invisible, until I made myself unforgettable. The crystal chandelier above me caught the light like 1,000 shattered diamonds. I was on my knees, scrubbing champagne stains out of Italian marble, when I first heard his voice cut through the private lounge like a blade. Their furniture, Marco. Invisible. They clean, they leave, they don't matter. My hands stilled. The rag in my fingers dripped pink liquid onto the floor I'd just cleaned. I didn't look up. I didn't need to. I knew exactly who was speaking. Castro Vincent. Owner of half the city's underground empire. A man whose name people whispered like a prayer or a curse, depending on which side of his mercy they stood on. And according to the employment contract I'd signed 3 months ago, he also owned this casino lounge, though his name appeared nowhere on the paperwork. I'd seen him before. Twice. Once from across the main floor, his profile sharp enough to cut glass as he watched the roulette table spin. Once in the hallway outside his private office, where I'd pressed myself against the wall and held my breath as he walked past in a suit that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. He'd looked right through me both times. Invisible. The word echoed in my head as I wrung out the rag and continued scrubbing. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, but my hands stayed steady. Something inside me shifted that night. Something quiet and cold and dangerous. They told me to keep my head down around powerful men. They were wrong. I finished my shift at 3 a.m. and walked home through streets that smelled like rain and exhaust. My apartment was a 5th-floor walk-up in a neighborhood where car alarms were the only lullaby. I sat on my bathroom floor, still in my work uniform, and stared at my reflection in the cabinet mirror. 24 years old. Brown eyes that had seen too much. Hair pulled back so tight it gave me headaches. A face people forgot the moment I left a room. Invisible. I thought about my mother, who'd cleaned houses her whole life and died with nothing but tired hands and unpaid medical bills. I thought about every man who'd ever looked past me, through me, around me. And I made a decision. If Castro Vincent thought I was furniture, I'd be the most perfectly polished, unreachably professional piece of furniture he'd ever seen. I wouldn't fight him with anger. I'd fight him with silence. If you think being underestimated makes you weak, you've already lost the game. Before we proceed further, here's something wild. Most of you watching this right now don't even realize you're not subscribed. I know, sounds crazy, right? But YouTube's weird like that. So if you're feeling this story, if you want more raw, emotional, unforgettable love stories that hit different, just tap that subscribe button. It literally takes half a second and helps us reach more people who need these stories as much as you do. Plus, you'll never miss what happens next. Because trust me, what I'm about to tell you changes everything. Now, back to the night that set everything in motion. The next evening, I arrived at the casino lounge 30 minutes early. I changed into my uniform in the staff bathroom and checked my appearance 3 times. Hair perfect. Posture straight. Face neutral. Professional. Untouchable. Invisible by choice. The lounge opened at 8 p.m. By 9, it was filled with men in expensive suits and women draped in silk. I moved through the space like water, clearing glasses, refreshing ice buckets, replacing ashtrays. And then he walked in. Castro Vincent moved like he owned gravity itself. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair pushed back from a face that could have been carved from marble. His suit was midnight blue, tailored so precisely it looked like armor. He was with 3 other men. They settled into the corner booth, the one with the best view of the entire room. I didn't hesitate. I picked up a tray of fresh glasses and walked directly to their table. "Good evening, sir." My voice was perfectly modulated. Professional. Empty of everything except competence. "May I offer you gentlemen something to drink?" Castro's eyes lifted to mine. Dark. assessing. Sharp enough to flay skin from bone. I met his gaze for exactly 2 seconds, then looked away. Not submissive. Just appropriate. Whiskey, he said. His voice was deep, textured, the kind of voice that vibrated in your chest. The Macallan. Neat. Of course, sir. I didn't smile. Didn't nod. Just turned and walked away with perfect posture. I felt his eyes on my back the entire way to the bar. The most dangerous thing you can do to a powerful man? Refuse to need him. Over the next 2 weeks, I perfected the art of professional distance. Every time Castro came to the lounge, I served him with flawless efficiency. I anticipated his needs before he voiced them. Fresh whiskey appeared at his table before his glass emptied. Ashtrays were replaced before they filled. I moved through his space like a ghost in a perfectly pressed uniform. And I never, ever made eye contact for more than 2 seconds. Thank you, sir. Right away, sir. Is there anything else you require, sir? The word became a wall between us. A reminder. A weapon. I watched him start to notice. The third night, his gaze followed me across the room when I delivered drinks to another table. The fifth night, he paused mid-sentence in his conversation when I approached to clear his table. The seventh night, he said, "You don't have to call me sir." I looked at him with perfect professional blankness. It's policy to address all guests formally, sir. Is there something wrong with the service? His jaw tightened. No. Wonderful, sir. Please let me know if you need anything else. I walked away before he could respond. Every woman who ever gave him attitude got a reaction. I gave him nothing. That's what made him obsessed. Something shifted in the lounge after that. I could feel it in the air, thick and electric, like the moment before a storm breaks. Castro started coming more often. 3 times a week. Then 4. Then nearly every night. He'd sit in his corner booth and conduct his business, his voice low and commanding as he spoke about shipments and territories and people who'd made mistakes. But his attention kept drifting. To me. To the way I moved through the room like I was alone. To the careful distance I maintained. I never acknowledged it. One night, I was clearing glasses from an empty table when I felt him behind me. "What's your name?" I turned, holding the tray of dirty glasses against my hip. Looked at him with perfect, empty politeness. "My name tag is on my uniform, sir." He glanced down at the small plastic rectangle pinned above my heart. Aria. The way he said it made something in my stomach twist. Low. Intimate. Like he was tasting it. "Yes, sir." I kept my voice flat. "Is there something you need?" "Why do you do that?" "Do what, sir?" "Call me sir like you're putting distance between us." I tilted my head slightly. "I call all guests sir, sir. It's professional courtesy. You know exactly what I mean." For the first time, I let myself really look at him. At the sharp line of his jaw. The faint scar above his left eyebrow. The way his dark eyes held mine like he was trying to read a language I'd deliberately written in code. "With respect, sir," I said quietly, "I don't believe my personal communication style is relevant to the quality of service I provide. Is there anything else I can get for you this evening?" Something dangerous flickered across his face. Not anger. Something worse. Interest. "No," he said softly. "That's all." I nodded once and walked away, my heart hammering so hard I thought he might hear it. He built an empire by reading people. I became the first person he couldn't read at all. If you've ever been underestimated, you already know, the quiet ones aren't weak. We're just choosing our moment. The game between us became a silent, dangerous dance. Castro would try to engage me in conversation. I would respond with perfect, professional brevity. He'd hold out a tip. I'd politely decline and remind him that gratuities were included in the service charge. He'd ask about my schedule. I'd tell him that staffing information was managed by my supervisor. Every wall I built made him push harder. And every time he pushed, I stepped back with perfect, unshakable courtesy. I was driving him insane. I could see it in the tension in his shoulders when I walked past his table without looking at him. In the way his fingers tightened around his glass when I called him sir in that empty, professional tone. In how his conversations with his associates would trail off mid-sentence when I entered the room. And God help me, I loved it. Not because I wanted his attention, but because for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible by someone else's choice. I was invisible by mine. They teach you to smile and be sweet to survive. I learned to be silent and became unforgettable. 3 weeks after I'd overheard him call people like me furniture, everything changed. It was a Friday night. The lounge was hosting a private event for Castro's associates, some kind of celebration for a business deal that had gone well. The room was packed with dangerous men in expensive suits and beautiful women who laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny. I worked the room mechanically, my face a professional mask, my movements efficient. Castro was holding court at the center table, his presence magnetic even in a room full of predators. He was mid-story, his associates leaning in, when I approached to refresh drinks. "Ah, Castro," one of the men said, gesturing toward me with his cigar. "Where do you find staff this attentive?" "She's been perfect all night." "She's excellent at her job," Castro said, his eyes finding mine. "What's your secret, sweetheart?" The man leered at me. "You like working for the boss?" I set down the fresh bottle of whiskey with precise, controlled movements. Looked at the man with empty professionalism. "I take pride in providing quality service to all guests, sir." I turned to Castro. My voice didn't change. Didn't warm. "Will there be anything else, sir?" The table went quiet. One of the other men coughed. Another shifted uncomfortably. Castro's expression was unreadable, but something flickered in his dark eyes. Something that looked almost like recognition. "No," he said quietly. "Thank you." I nodded once and walked away. Behind me, I heard one of the men whistle low. "Ice cold, that one." "Maybe that's what the boss needs," another laughed. "Someone who doesn't fall at his feet." I didn't hear Castro's response. I was already moving to the next table, my heart pounding, my hands steady. He was used to women who performed for him. I refused to perform at all. That's when he realized I was different. The night wore on. Drinks flowed. Voices grew louder. I continued my careful choreography through the room, present but untouchable. Around midnight, I was in the back hallway, restocking my supply cart, when I heard footsteps behind me. I knew who it was before I turned around. Castro stood in the hallway, his jacket unbuttoned, his tie slightly loosened. He looked like sin and power wrapped in Italian wool. "Aria." I straightened, keeping the cart between us like a barrier. "Sir. The lounge is that way if you need." "I know where the lounge is." He stepped closer. Not threatening. Just deliberate. "I want to know why you hate me." The words hit like a slap. I kept my face neutral. "I don't hate you, sir. You treat me like I'm contaminated." "I treat you with professional respect, sir." "You treat me like I'm nothing." The silence between us stretched thin and dangerous. I looked at him directly. Let him see the carefully controlled nothing in my eyes. "You're not nothing, sir. You're a valued guest." I paused. Just like everyone else in that room. His jaw clenched. "Stop calling me sir." It's policy. Fuck policy. His voice dropped, rough and low. Why won't you look at me like I'm real? Something in my chest cracked. Just a hairline fracture. Barely visible. You taught me that, sir. The words came out quieter than I intended. 3 months ago. In that room. You said people like me are furniture. Invisible. We don't matter. I tilted my head slightly. I'm just being what you expected. The color drained from his face. I watched him remember. Watched the recognition hit. Watched him realize that I'd heard. That I'd been there. That I'd been invisible then, and I was choosing to stay invisible now. Aria. Is there anything else you need, sir? My voice was perfectly professional again. Empty. Because I have tables to attend to. I didn't know you were there. I know, sir. That's exactly the problem. I moved to step around him, but his hand shot out, not touching me, just blocking my path. Wait. Sir, I really need to. Please. The word stopped me. Not because it was commanding, but because it was desperate. I looked up at him. Really looked. Saw something in his dark eyes that looked almost like regret. I was wrong, he said quietly. What I said that night. I was wrong. You were honest, I corrected softly. That's how you see people like me. And that's fine, sir. You're entitled to your perspective. But you're not entitled to mine. His hand dropped. What does that mean? It means. I straightened my shoulders. I choose who gets to see me. And you, sir, have not earned that privilege. I stepped around him and walked back toward the lounge, my heart breaking and soaring at the same time. Behind me, Castro Vincent stood in an empty hallway, looking like a man who'd just realized he'd lost something he'd never known he wanted. I didn't need his apology. I needed him to understand that my worth wasn't his to determine. If you're still trying to prove yourself to people who never saw you, you're playing the wrong game. Stop seeking validation. Start owning your value. Everything changed after that night. Castro stopped trying to engage me in conversation. Stopped asking questions. Stopped looking at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Instead, he started watching. I'd feel his eyes on me across the room. Tracking my movements. Studying the way I worked. The careful professionalism I maintained with every guest. But he didn't approach. Didn't push. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like loss. I told myself I didn't care. Told myself that maintaining boundaries was strength, not weakness. Told myself that a man who dismissed my humanity didn't deserve access to it now. But late at night, alone in my apartment, I'd replay that moment in the hallway. The way his voice had cracked on the word please. The regret in his eyes. And I'd wonder if I was being strong or just afraid. Protection and pride feel the same when you're scared to trust again. 2 weeks passed. The lounge continued its nightly rhythm. I continued my careful dance of professional distance. And Castro continued to watch me like I was a language he'd forgotten how to read. Then came the night that shattered everything. It was a Tuesday, slower than usual. The lounge had maybe 30 guests scattered across the room. I was wiping down the bar when I heard raised voices from the corner booth. Castro's booth. I looked up. Saw a man I didn't recognize leaning across the table, his face red with anger. Saw Castro's expression go cold and dangerous. You think you can just cut me out? The stranger shouted. After everything I've done for you? Vincent. Castro's voice was ice. You're making a scene. I don't give a fuck about a scene. Vincent's hand disappeared into his jacket. Everything happened in slow motion. I saw the glint of metal. Saw Castro's associates start to move. Saw the other guests freeze. And I didn't think. I grabbed the bottle of expensive scotch from the bar and walked directly to the booth. "Excuse me, gentlemen." My voice cut through the tension like a knife. Professional. Calm. Utterly unbothered. "Sir, you requested the Macallan 25. I apologize for the delay." I stepped between Vincent and Castro, my body blocking the gun, and set the bottle down on the table with a soft clink. The room held its breath. Vincent stared at me like I'd materialized from thin air. "What the hell are you?" "Sir," I said politely, looking at him with empty professional courtesy. "I'm going to have to ask you to remove your hand from your jacket. This is a private establishment, and weapons are not permitted on the premises." "Are you fucking insane?" "No, sir. I'm ensuring all guests comply with house rules." I gestured toward the door. "Security will escort you out." "Thank you for your understanding." 3 security guards appeared from nowhere, massive men in black suits. They surrounded Vincent, who looked between them and me with wild, disbelieving eyes. "You crazy bitch. Have a pleasant evening, sir." I stepped aside, allowing the guards to remove him from the booth. The lounge watched in stunned silence as Vincent was escorted out, still cursing and threatening. I picked up the empty glasses from Castro's table with perfectly steady hands. "Will there be anything else, gentlemen?" Castro was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Like I was a ghost. A miracle. A complete impossibility. "Aria." His voice was raw. "You just performed my job, sir." I met his eyes for exactly 2 seconds. Ensuring guest safety is part of the service. He had a gun. "Yes, sir. I noticed. You could have been killed." I allowed myself the smallest, most professional smile. But I wasn't. I turned to walk away, my heart finally starting to race now that the adrenaline was catching up. "Wait." Castro stood, his hand catching my wrist. The touch sent electricity straight through my bones. I looked down at where his fingers wrapped around my wrist. Then up at his face. "Sir," I said quietly. "Please let go." "Why did you do that?" "It's my job to." "Bullshit." His grip tightened. "Not painful. Just desperate. You hate me. You've made that clear. So why would you step between me and a gun?" I looked at him for a long moment. At the genuine confusion in his dark eyes. At the fear that was just starting to show through his usual control. "I don't hate you, sir." My voice was soft. Honest. "I just don't trust you." "Then why?" "Because regardless of what you think of people like me." I gently pulled my wrist from his grip. "I don't believe anyone deserves to die in the middle of their scotch." I walked away before he could respond. Behind me, I heard one of his associates whistle low. "Boss, I think you've met your match." I didn't hear Castro's response. I was too busy trying to remember how to breathe. The moment you stop protecting yourself and start protecting others is the moment everything changes. They told me never to get involved. To stay invisible. To protect myself first. Breaking that rule saved my life. The lounge closed at 3 a.m. I finished my cleaning routine, changed out of my uniform, and walked out the staff exit into the cool night air. Castro was leaning against a black Mercedes, his jacket off, his sleeves rolled up. Waiting. I stopped. Considered turning around and going back inside. "Please," he said before I could move. "Just give me 5 minutes." "Sir. My name is Castro." His voice was rough. "Not sir." Castro. The use of his first name felt forbidden. Intimate. Like crossing a line I'd spent weeks carefully maintaining. I stayed where I was, keeping 10 feet of distance between us. He pushed off the car and took a step closer. Just one. Like he was approaching something wild that might bolt. "What you did tonight was insane," he said. "I'm aware. You could have died. You mentioned that already." "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why would you risk your life for someone you don't even trust?" I looked at him across the distance. At the man who'd called me furniture. Who'd looked through me like I was air. Who'd spent 3 months watching me maintain perfect, professional distance. "Because trust and worth are different things," I said quietly. "I don't trust you. But that doesn't mean you're worthless." He flinched like I'd struck him. "Aria. I heard what you said that night." The words came out before I could stop them. About people like me being invisible. Furniture. Not mattering. I wrapped my arms around myself. "And you were right, in a way. People don't see us. They don't think about us. We're just part of the background." I was an asshole. "You were honest." I met his eyes. "You said what most people think but don't say out loud." "And honestly? I prefer that. At least with you, I knew exactly where I stood." "Where do you stand now?" The question hung between us like smoke. "I don't know," I admitted. "I spent 3 months making myself invisible to you as punishment. As protection. As proof that my presence or absence was my choice, not yours." I paused. "And then tonight, I threw all of that away in 10 seconds. Why?" "Because." I struggled to find words that wouldn't sound stupid. Because no matter how angry I was, no matter how hurt, I couldn't watch someone die in front of me and do nothing. Castro closed the distance between us in 3 strides. Stopped just close enough that I could feel the heat of him. "You're the bravest person I've ever met," he said quietly. "I'm really not. You stood between a man and a bullet without hesitating." I didn't think. If I'd thought, I would have run. Exactly. He reached out slowly, giving me time to step back. When I didn't, his fingers brushed my cheek. "You didn't think. You just acted. Do you know how rare that is?" His touch felt like fire. Like falling. Like every dangerous thing I'd been carefully avoiding. I should have stepped back. Should have maintained the boundary. Should have protected myself. Instead, I let myself lean into his palm. Just for a second. Just long enough to feel what it would be like to let my guard down. Then I pulled away. "This doesn't change anything," I said softly. "Doesn't it? You still see the world the way you see it. And I still see it the way I see it. One moment of stupid bravery doesn't erase 3 months of careful distance." What if I wanted to? The question made my heart stutter. Want what? To erase the distance. He stepped closer again. To see you. Really see you. Not as furniture. Not as staff. As Aria. I looked up at him. At the raw honesty in his dark eyes. At the way his hand was still half raised, like he wanted to touch me again but was afraid I'd disappear. "You don't know me," I whispered. "Then let me." God, I wanted to. Wanted to drop every wall and let him in. Wanted to believe that people could change, that first impressions weren't final verdicts, that a man who dismissed my humanity could learn to value it. But I was so tired of wanting things I couldn't have. "I need to go," I said. I walked past him toward the street. Made it maybe 5 steps before his voice stopped me. "Aria." I turned. He was standing in the pool of light from the street lamp, looking lost and dangerous and heartbreakingly sincere. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what I said. For how I saw you. For every moment I made you feel invisible." He paused. "And I know sorry doesn't fix it. But I need you to know, you're the only person I see anymore." The words hit like a physical blow. I stood there in the dark street, my heart breaking and healing at the same time, and made a choice. "Prove it," I said quietly. "What?" "If you really see me, then prove it." I straightened my shoulders. "Stop treating me like I'm special because I stood in front of a gun. Stop trying to fix what you broke with pretty words. If you want me to believe you've changed, then show me." "How?" "See everyone else too," I said. "All the invisible people. The ones who clean your floors and serve your drinks and fade into the background the moment they leave a room. If you can learn to see them." I paused. "Maybe I'll believe you can really see me." I turned and walked away before he could respond. This time, he didn't call after me. Real change isn't about seeing one person differently. It's about seeing everyone differently. That's what separates love from obsession. I didn't work the next 3 nights. Called in sick, which wasn't entirely a lie. My hands wouldn't stop shaking every time I thought about the gun. About stepping between Vincent and Castro. About the way Castro had looked at me in that dark street. I spent 72 hours in my apartment, eating cereal and questioning every choice I'd made. On the 4th night, I went back. The lounge looked the same. Sounded the same. Smelled the same. But something was different. I noticed it in the way Castro greeted the coat check girl by name. In how he thanked the busboy who cleared his table. In the way he held the door for one of the older cleaning staff, a woman who'd worked there longer than I'd been alive. Small things. Tiny gestures. But they added up to something that looked like awareness. I watched from across the room, my chest tight, as Castro Vincent, billionaire, mafia boss, most powerful man in the city, treated every single person he encountered like they mattered. Like they were visible. And when his eyes finally found mine across the crowded lounge, I saw something in them that made my breath catch. Hope. When a powerful man changes not to win you, but because you showed him why he should, that's when you know it's real. We didn't speak that night. Or the next. Or the one after that. But the silence between us shifted. Became something different. Something charged with possibility instead of distance. I continued my work with professional efficiency. He continued his careful awareness of everyone around him. And slowly, carefully, the walls between us started to crack. It happened in small moments. The night I brought him his whiskey and he said, "Thank you, Aria," instead of just nodding. The night he asked if I wanted a break and meant it, not as a pickup line but as genuine concern. The night he noticed I was limping from a twisted ankle and had his driver bring me ice without asking. Small gestures. Tiny shifts. But they added up to something that felt like respect. You are not defined by how people first see you. You're defined by what you demand they see next. 3 weeks after the incident with Vincent, I was cleaning up after closing when Castro appeared in the doorway. "Can we talk?" I looked up from the table I was wiping down. "About?" "You. Me. This." He gestured between us. "Whatever this is." I set down my rag. "I'm working, sir." "Castro." His voice was firm. "Please." "My name is Castro." The use of his name still felt forbidden. But this time, I let myself say it. "Castro." Something in his expression softened. "I've been thinking about what you said. About proving I've changed. About seeing people. And you were right." He stepped into the room. I spent my whole life looking at people as tools. Resources. Furniture, like you said. Not because I'm cruel, but because that's how I was taught to survive. I'm not asking for your life story. I know. He came closer. But I'm giving it to you anyway. Because you deserve to know who I am. Not the version I show everyone else. The real one. I leaned against the table, arms crossed. Okay. So who are you? He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. I'm the son of a man who taught me that emotions are weakness and people are expendable. I built an empire by being harder, colder, more ruthless than anyone else. He paused. And then I met someone who looked at me with empty professionalism and made me realize that being untouchable isn't the same as being strong. My heart stuttered. I don't need to be your project, I said softly. You're not. He took another step closer. You're the person who showed me that I've been living half alive. That treating people like furniture means I've been furniture too. Just expensive, well-dressed furniture that other furniture avoids. Despite everything, I smiled. That's a terrible metaphor. I know. He smiled back, and it transformed his face. Made him look younger. More real. I'm bad at this. At talking about feelings. At being honest about what I want. What do you want? The question hung between us. Castro looked at me like I was the only real thing in a room full of illusions. I want to know you, he said quietly. Not as my employee. Not as the brave woman who saved my life. As Aria. The person who turned invisibility into power and made me question everything I thought I knew. I should have said no. Should have protected myself. Should have remembered every reason this was a bad idea. Instead, I asked, why? Because you're the first person who ever made me want to be better instead of just more powerful. His hand lifted, hovering near my face. And because every time you call me sir in that empty professional voice, I want to know what my name sounds like when you say it like you mean it. The air between us crackled. This is a terrible idea, I whispered. Probably. You're my boss. Technically, I'm the owner. Your boss is the floor manager. That doesn't make it better. I know. His fingers brushed my cheek. But I can't keep pretending I don't see you. That I don't think about you every second of every day. That I don't want to know everything about you, from your favorite color to what makes you laugh to why you chose to work here in the first place. Purple, I said before I could stop myself. What? My favorite color. It's purple. His smile could have lit the whole city. See? That's a start. And against every piece of logic and self-preservation I possessed, I smiled back. The moment you stop protecting your heart and start trusting it is terrifying. It's also the only way to truly live. We started slowly. Coffee during my break. Conversations in the back hallway after closing. Stolen moments between his business calls and my shift responsibilities. I learned that Castro took his coffee black but secretly loved sweet things. That he'd learned to play piano as a child but hadn't touched one in years. That he read philosophy books at 3 a.m. when he couldn't sleep. He learned that I'd dropped out of college to care for my dying mother. That I was terrified of heights but loved thunderstorms. That I wanted to be a writer but had convinced myself that dreams were for people who could afford them. We learned each other in fragments. In quiet confessions and careful trust. And slowly, the distance between us became something else. Became intimacy. Falling in love with someone who once hurt you isn't weakness. It's choosing to believe in transformation instead of staying safe in bitterness. The first time he kissed me, it was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. We were in his office, supposedly reviewing scheduling changes. But we'd stopped pretending we were talking about work 20 minutes ago. I can't stop thinking about you, he said suddenly. I looked up from the paperwork neither of us was actually reading. Castro. I know. I know all the reasons this is complicated. I know I'm your boss. I know I hurt you. I know you have every right to keep your walls up. He stood, walking around the desk to where I sat. But I need you to know that what I feel for you isn't about conquest or control or any of the things I usually feel. It's about you. Just you. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it everywhere. I'm scared, I whispered. Of me? Of this. Of wanting something I might lose. Of trusting someone who could destroy me. He knelt in front of my chair, his hands resting on the armrests, caging me in without touching. I won't destroy you, he said quietly. I'll protect you. From everyone, including myself. You can't promise that. I can promise to try. His dark eyes held mine. I can promise that I see you, Aria. Every part of you. The brave parts and the scared parts and all the complicated, beautiful parts in between. A tear slid down my cheek before I could stop it. I see you too, I admitted. And it terrifies me. Why? Because. I struggled for words. Because you're not supposed to be good. You're supposed to be the villain in this story. The powerful man who dismisses people and uses them and moves on. But instead you're… What? Human, I whispered. You're just human. Trying. Failing. Wanting to be better. And I don't know what to do with that. His hand lifted slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, he cupped my face with a gentleness that shattered something inside me. Let me love you, he said softly. Let me prove that I can be worthy of what you've already given me. I haven't given you anything. You've given me everything. His thumb brushed away my tear. You've given me sight. Purpose. A reason to be more than just powerful. I leaned forward, closing the distance between us, and pressed my forehead to his. If you break my heart, I whispered, I'll make sure you never forget me. He laughed, soft and low. Aria, forgetting you is impossible. And then he kissed me. It was soft. Gentle. Reverent. Like I was something precious instead of something invisible. And I kissed him back, letting myself fall into the terrifying, beautiful trust of it. Sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't building walls. It's choosing to tear them down. We tried to keep it quiet at first. But in a world where Castro was constantly watched, constantly scrutinized, privacy was an illusion. Within 2 weeks, his associates knew. Within 3, the lounge staff was whispering. Within 4, it was an open secret that the untouchable boss and the invisible cleaner were somehow, impossibly, together. And the reactions were complicated. Some of the staff treated me with new deference, like I'd suddenly become important by association. Others whispered that I was using him, that I'd calculated my way into his bed and his wallet. I hated both versions. They don't know you, Castro said one night when I confessed how much the gossip bothered me. They think they do. So prove them wrong. He pulled me closer on the couch in his penthouse apartment, where I'd started spending most of my non-working hours. Be exactly who you are. Let them think what they want. Easy for you to say. You're used to people talking about you. And it used to bother me too. He pressed a kiss to my temple. Until I realized that the only opinions that matter are the ones from people who actually know me. And how many people is that? Right now? He smiled. 1. I looked up at him. At the man who'd gone from seeing me as furniture to seeing me as everything. At the transformation I'd witnessed, not because he wanted something from me, but because I'd shown him why he should want to be different. "I love you," I said. The words surprised me as much as they surprised him. Castro went very still. "Say that again." "I love you." This time it came easier. More certain. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you started saying my name like it mattered. Maybe when you learned every staff member's name because I asked you to. Maybe the first time you kissed me like I was breakable and precious. But somewhere along the way, I stopped protecting myself from you and started trusting you instead." He kissed me then. Deep and slow and thorough, like he was memorizing the shape of my mouth, the taste of my truth. When he pulled back, his eyes were suspiciously bright. "I love you too," he said roughly. "I love your courage and your silence and the way you turned my whole world upside down by refusing to need me. I love that you made me work for every smile, every conversation, every moment of trust. I love that you're the first person who ever saw past the power to the person underneath." We stayed tangled together on that couch for hours, trading confessions and kisses and the kind of honest vulnerability that only comes when two people decide to stop protecting themselves and start protecting each other. Real love isn't about completing each other. It's about choosing each other, even when it's complicated, even when it's scary, even when the world doesn't understand. 6 months after I overheard Castro call people like me furniture, he threw a party. Not for business. Not for power. For the staff. Every person who worked at the casino lounge was invited to a formal dinner at the city's most exclusive restaurant. Servers, cleaners, security guards, coat check attendants. Everyone. I stood next to him as he made a toast, his arm around my waist, claiming me publicly for the first time. "I spent most of my life not seeing people," he said to the room. "Treating them as tools. Resources. Invisible pieces of a machine I was building." His eyes found mine. "And then someone taught me that the people we don't see are often the ones who see us most clearly. Who hold our worlds together while we take credit for the architecture." He raised his glass. "To visibility. To respect. To the people who make everything else possible." The room erupted in applause. I looked around at the faces of people I'd worked beside for months. Saw tears in some eyes. Pride in others. Recognition in all of them. And I realized that this moment of being seen, of being valued, of mattering, was what I'd been fighting for all along. Not just for myself. For all of us. You don't change the world by fighting the powerful. You change it by teaching them to see what they've been missing. Later that night, Castro and I stood on the balcony of his penthouse, the city spreading out below us like a carpet of stars. "Thank you," I said quietly. "For what?" "For listening. For changing. For proving that people can be more than their worst moments." He pulled me closer, his chin resting on top of my head. "I should be thanking you. You saved my life twice. Once from a bullet. Once from becoming the kind of man who'd deserve one." I turned in his arms, looking up at him. "So what now?" "Now?" He smiled. "Now we figure it out together. The complicated parts and the easy parts and everything in between. I'm still going to work at the lounge," I said. "I'm not quitting just because we're together. I know. And I'm still going to call you sir when we're in professional spaces." His smile turned wicked. "I'm okay with that." I smacked his chest. "Not like that. Professionally. Whatever you say, Aria." I laughed, and the sound felt like freedom. Like choice. Like all the invisible parts of me finally, beautifully seen. "I love you," I said again, because I could. Because it was true. Because he'd earned the right to hear it. "I love you too." He kissed me softly. My invisible girl who became the only person I'll ever truly see. We stood there under the stars, two people who'd learned that visibility isn't about being noticed. It's about being chosen. And we chose each other every day, in every complicated, beautiful, terrifyingly real way. They'll tell you that powerful men don't change. That first impressions are final verdicts. That invisible people should stay invisible. They're wrong. Because the most powerful thing you can ever do is teach someone to see what they've been missing. Starting with themselves.